My name is Lucas, and the story I'm about to tell you is the most terrifying experience of my life. I've been a cop for years, working in the precinct, and believe me, I've seen a lot of strange things over the course of my career. But nothing at all, could have prepared me for what happened that night. It was a regular night. I was on my patrol shift. The only thing keeping me company, besides the sound of the patrol car's radio, was the darkness of the city. The silence of the early morning made the city feel even emptier, and I knew, as usual, that the night would be long. What I didn't know was that it would also be the most terrifying night of my life. I was driving through the streets when the radio crackled, breaking the silence. It was the Central Dispatch. Unit 17, we have an emergency call at the Central Hospital. Possible break-in. All available officers respond immediately. The hospital was old. Everyone knew it had a strange reputation. I'd heard stories, but I never imagined that a simple emergency call would turn into the nightmare I was about to face. I arrived at the hospital, and immediately I sensed that something was wrong. The streetlights were out, the front door looked locked, but when I pushed it, it creaked open with an unsettling sound. The building was completely silent. A silence that didn't fit the idea of a possible break-in. I entered cautiously, hearing only the echo of my footsteps in the empty halls. That's when I started hearing the first screams. Not the screams of patients or doctors, but something different, something more desperate. It sounded like it was coming from the basement, where the hospital was undergoing renovations, an area that was off limits. I should have called for backup. But something was pulling me toward it, toward the unknown. The adrenaline mixed with fear as I descended the stairs, heading toward the restricted area. The door was slightly ajar. The sound was louder now, almost like someone was calling me, but from a distant time, a distant place. The air felt thicker, denser. I should have turned around, but I didn't. My curiosity pushed me forward. What I found on the other side of that door was something I can't fully explain. It was as if time no longer mattered. The walls, once simple and old, now seemed to move, distorted as if they were alive, with cracks and marks spreading further with each step I took. Suddenly the sound stopped. The screams went silent. And that's when I saw it. At the end of the hallway, a faint light flickered. I knew I had to go toward it, but at the same time, a sense of panic overwhelmed me. Something was wrong. I walked toward the light and reached a door, old and nearly destroyed by time. I was about to open it when a cold sensation stopped me. It felt like something was watching me, and then I heard it. "Help us!" The voice seemed to come from inside the door. I couldn't move. My body had frozen in place. When I finally managed to push open the door, what I saw left me speechless. Bodies, piled up. Their faces were deformed with wide, empty eyes, as if they were trapped in a state of eternal agony. They were there, lifeless, but the energy of the place made it feel like something was still keeping them inside the hospital. Something beyond death, something far darker. Before I could take a step back, I heard the door slam shut behind me. My flashlight flickered and went out. I was plunged into complete darkness, trapped in that environment that now felt even more suffocating. That's when I saw her. The figure, thin, skeletal, with completely black eyes, lifeless. She was standing right in front of me, silently staring at me. I couldn't move. There was something about her presence that froze me to the core. She spoke in a hoarse, low voice. "You shouldn't be here." I tried to step back, but something held me in place. I looked down and saw skeletal hands emerging from the floor, gripping my feet with an unnatural strength. I wanted to scream, but no sound escaped my mouth. Fear consumed me, leaving me barely able to breathe. "You can't leave. Not ever." That's when everything around me started to distort. The hallway, the walls, the ceiling, all of it began to shift, as if the very structure of the hospital was alive. I felt my body being pulled deeper and deeper into the corridor, as though something invisible was dragging me, forcing me further into the darkness. The footsteps, the screams, they grew louder, more frantic, like an overwhelming presence. I was lost, trapped in a place with no escape. The hospital wasn't just a building. It was a prison, a place where the souls of those who died there were kept, and now I was becoming one of them. The sensation of being consumed by the darkness grew with every passing second. I felt that presence devouring me slowly, like a vortex of terror, pulling me into an endless abyss. That's when I understood. The hospital, that place, was alive. It fed on the souls of everyone who died there, and now it wanted mine too, and I was completely at its mercy. I never left that place, and even now as I tell you this story, something tells me that I'm still there, trapped between the walls of that hospital, waiting to become just another lost soul. My name is Bob, and what I'm about to tell you happened on one of the darkest and most disturbing nights of my life. I worked as a night security guard for a large commercial building in downtown. The job wasn't complicated, but it always left me feeling uneasy. The silence of the night, the empty halls, everything seemed amplified in the early hours. But it was on one of those nights that everything changed. It was an ordinary day, just like all the others. The sun had already set, and the city lights began to shine outside. I started my shift, doing rounds on the higher floors where the offices were closed and no one else was around. The building was old, full of secrets and stories that no one dared to tell, but I never imagined I'd be the next victim of those imposing walls. I passed by the 15th floor, checking locked doors, security, cameras, and the alarm systems. Everything seemed quiet until the radio, which was hanging on my belt, suddenly crackled. It was the operations center, but the communication sounded different. The voice from the center seemed anxious, which wasn't typical. I immediately felt comfortable. It was a clear instruction. Head to the 10th floor, where something unusual had been recorded by the security cameras. The 10th floor was a storage area, a small space rarely used. I knew it shouldn't be anything serious, but at the same time, something inside me told me it would be different. I reached the 10th floor, and everything seemed eerily quiet, more so than usual. The lights were off, and the air felt strange, heavy, as if something on that floor was waiting for me. The hallway was empty, but I still had that feeling, the feeling of being watched, as if someone was observing me. When I reached the room where the camera signal seemed to come from, I noticed something unusual. The door was ajar, as if someone had left in a hurry, or maybe even forced it open. I slowly pushed the door. The sound of metal scraping against the walls echoed through the empty space. The room was shrouded in shadow, and everything seemed out of place. Boxes were stacked carelessly, and old furniture was covered in dust. In the center of the room, there was a chair. An empty chair. But something about it didn't seem right. I approached it, feeling a chill run down my spine. And then I saw what was sitting in it. The figure was facing away from me, motionless. A sensation of dread washed over me. But what made me hesitate even more was the eerie calmness that radiated from it. I didn't know whether I should approach or run away, but something compelled me to keep going. With each step, my heart raced. Faster. I stopped, feeling something was terribly wrong, too wrong to ignore. Suddenly, the figure turned slowly. It wasn't human. Its eyes were completely black, devoid of pupils. The skin was pale and stretched, marked by dark veins, and the smile that formed wasn't a normal smile. It was twisted, almost grotesque. Something was terribly wrong here. I felt like time had slowed down. The air around me became thick, heavy, as if I were in a place completely detached from reality. The surroundings began to distort in such a way that the walls seemed to move, the furniture turned into shadows, and the floor beneath me no longer felt solid. I didn't know what was happening, but the feeling of being watched, judged, grew stronger with each passing second. I tried to take a step back, but it was as though an invisible force was holding me in place. I was trapped. I didn't know how or why. The figure didn't move, but its eyes, those empty eyes, stared at me with an intensity that made me feel as if I were being consumed by something far greater than I could comprehend. Then the walls began to close in. Slowly, the room shrank around me. I could feel myself being pulled toward the center of the space, toward the center of that thing that was there. The air became denser, and the pressure mounted with each passing moment. I tried to move, but my body seemed to have lost all control. Shadows began to take form around me, shadows that stretched out like tendrils reaching for me. The silence was shattered by a strange sound, like a muffled whisper coming from all directions. I couldn't make out what it was, but the feeling of being observed intensified. The room seemed to be alive, and I was completely powerless to stop it. When I finally managed to take a step back, the figure vanished. There was no chair, nothing. Everything was empty again, as if nothing had happened. I found myself back in the hallway, my heart racing, and my body drenched in cold sweat. But the 10th floor was still there, unchanged, yet somehow different. The air was heavier, more suffocating, and I knew something on that floor, something in that room was waiting for me. The feeling that something was there waiting to consume me never left. I ran out of that floor, my legs shaking, my body in panic, not daring to look back. When I reached the exit door, something prevented me from opening it. The sound of breathing, the sound of that thing, still lingered in the back of my mind. The building didn't want me to leave, as if it were keeping me there. Forever. I never went back to the 10th floor. But to this day, I know something is still there, waiting for me. I can still hear the echoes of the breathing, the whispers that follow me wherever I go. The building, that place, is still alive, and I don't know how much longer I can run from it. My name is Bill, and what I'm about to tell you happened one night that still haunts me. I work as a truck driver, delivering goods during the night shift in the United States. My routine was never too exciting, but something changed one of those nights. It was a normal night, or at least it should have been. The sky was clear and the road was empty. I was driving along Interstate 95, making a delivery to a warehouse in the interior of Florida. The delivery was supposed to be quick, just a few hours of driving, and I had a long way to go. The radio was on, playing some soft music, and the sound of the road was the only thing I could hear until something unexpected happened. The first thing that caught my attention was the atmosphere. It wasn't cold, but suddenly the air felt heavier. The visibility, which had been fine, began to deteriorate inexplicably. A thick fog formed around the truck, covering the road ahead like a veil. I stopped the truck, trying to understand what was going on, but the fog seemed to only grow thicker. The road, which was usually long and peaceful, now felt like a ghostly landscape. I decided to continue, thinking it was just a temporary natural phenomenon. However, as I kept going, the discomfort started to grow. Something didn't feel right. The fog didn't seem to dissipate, and when I looked to the sides, I saw nothing but darkness. There were no other vehicles, no lights in the distance. The road seemed deserted, as if the world had disappeared around me. Then I saw something, or rather, someone. A figure appeared by the side of the road, walking slowly through the fog. It was a tall man dressed in dark clothes. But what made me stop the truck was the fact that he was completely still, standing there staring at my truck. The feeling of strangeness was immediate. I knew it wasn't normal. What was a person doing alone, at this hour, in such an isolated place? I decided to stop. I didn't want to take any chances, as the man seemed to have no urgency, just watching me with an unnerving calm. When the truck stopped, the figure moved to the side, as if letting me pass. I accelerated, but soon after, something very strange happened. The fog became denser, and suddenly, I noticed that I was moving slower and slower. The truck's engine was failing for no reason. I tried to start it again, but it wouldn't respond. It was as if something was pulling the truck backward, as if the road itself were closing in on me. I tried to force the truck to move, but that's when I heard the sound. A low, distant noise, but it was growing. A sound that seemed to come from all directions at once. It was like the murmur of many voices, as if the very air was filled with murmurs and sighs. My breathing grew heavy, my heart raced. I knew something wasn't right. I looked at the rearview mirror, and that's when I saw it. The figure that had been by the side of the road was now in the middle of the road, standing, facing the truck, felt a pressure on my chest, as if something was watching me, something more than human. The fog around me grew thicker and the voices grew louder. I tried to accelerate again, but the truck wouldn't respond. In a panic, I got out of the vehicle and tried to figure out what was happening, but the visibility was almost zero. The sound of murmurs was unbearable. They seemed to surround me. That's when something materialized in front of me. A figure, no longer human but distorted, like a shadow taking form. It had no face, just a dark silhouette that seemed to move closer, ready to engulf me. I couldn't breathe. My movements were frozen by fear. The fog around me seemed to swallow me whole, and the air was freezing, as cold as death's touch. The figure extended its hand toward me, and it was like time stopped. I tried to scream, run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was trapped, completely immobilized, at the mercy of something I couldn't understand. The figure drew closer, and the voices around me grew in a crescendo, all screaming in unison. But I couldn't understand what they were saying. It was like an endless nightmare. But then, in a burst of pure adrenaline, I was able to free myself from the paralysis. I ran with all my strength, not looking back, not thinking about anything but escaping. The sound of the voices, the cold air, everything was a blur. But the only thing I felt was the urgency to flee. I ran until I reached the truck and, in a desperate act, started the engine. The truck roared to life and surged forward. The road seemed to open up before me and I didn't stop. I drove as fast as I could, not looking at the rearview mirrors until the fog finally began to dissipate. When I passed a gas station, I stopped, exhausted but relieved. I took a deep breath, looking around. There was no more fog, and the road was clear. I knew I had escaped something I couldn't understand, but I would never forget it. Every time I drive at night, that feeling of being watched, of something waiting, stays with me. No matter how many times I drive, the memory of those shadows never leaves me, and I always wonder what would have happened if I hadn't managed to escape.